Joining us now is Kachi Ofia with stories trending around the world. Hello, Kachi. Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Abati. Good morning, Tundun. Good morning, viewers. Let's take a look at stories trending today. Now, we are going to begin with what exactly is going on in the U.S. This is actually a very, it's a very tricky situation. So we're going to begin with the fact that Jeff Zucker, the CNN worldwide president, has actually resigned. He has resigned as a result of the fact that he failed to reveal a relationship that he had with, well, a colleague of the organization, Allison Gollust. And he said that while the investigation to Chris Cuomo's firing was out, he failed to, relate that incident to, the organization involved in investigating it. Now, this is a scandal that rocked the organization following Chris Cuomo's resignation for his role in his brother Andrew Cuomo's scandal. Now, the issue is still biting people at the channel. Like I said earlier, worldwide president Jeff Zucker, the influential news executive who reshaped the iconic network, has resigned from his position effective immediately. He said when he was asked about a consensual relationship with his closest colleague and was required to disclose it when it began, he didn't, and he was wrong. Now, moving on to the fact that he did not name his colleague, that relationship, like I said earlier, is with Allison Gollust, his key lieutenant for the last 2 decades. It is also important to note that she was also communications director for the New York State governor, Andrew Cuomo, well, the former Andrew Cuomo governor, who resigned just last summer in the midst of the storm of sexual harassment allegations. Now, the former president as well, Donald Trump, came out with a statement to gloat over the downfall of perhaps his #1 media arch nemesis, Jeff Zucker, calling him a world-class sleazebag who has headed ratings and real news challenged CNN for far too long. He added that now is a chance to put fake news in the backseat. Jeff Zucker is gone. Congratulations to all. Now, for a lot of people who have looked into this incident, it's very tricky. One, because the relationship between Allison Gollust and Jeff Zucker was not unknown to the public, was not unknown, especially to people within CNN. They were photographed at a Phil Collins concert with other executives within CNN. So the issue is it the relationship or what emanated from that relationship that is the issue? And then Donald Trump's response, which is odd because some would say that Jeff Zucker was one of the key factors to Donald Trump even becoming president, okaying The Apprentice when he was head on NBC Entertainment. So there's so many issues that are arising from this, but definitely Andrew Cuomo's, resignation as governor is just having a ripple effect. It's like it's biting everyone, and it's not done yet. I'm expecting somebody else is going to come down as a result of this incident.
Well, this is the thing. The morality clause is a double-edged sword. I'm sure he's wishing now that he had paid Chris Cuomo that $18 million that was left on his contract. You'll recall that Chris Cuomo was suing CNN. Chris Cuomo, they stopped his bag because even his publisher dropped his book, so he was really going after CNN. And it's in that process that this has been uncovered, so there's some hypocrisy here. And yeah, you're right, the morality clause bites, and you don't know who might be next. However, I wouldn't characterize Zucker as the arch nemesis to Donald Trump, even though he clearly does. He's really come out with this is really gross schadenfreude. I actually think that President Trump is a creation of Zucker's because, like you said, he greenlit The Apprentice. And what The Apprentice did was a smash hit reality show. What it did was that Donald Trump in the 80s, I mean, he's been a high-profile figure for most of my life. In the 80s, he was known as this like New York State real estate mogul, but he faced bankruptcies. He wasn't known as this particularly savvy business person. He was known as somebody who came into money, he inherited money and was able to spin it and just had a lot of brashness and a huge brand behind him, but no real substance. But The Apprentice gave him a platform and it showed him to Americans as a mogul, as the business person. With that, his trademark, "You're Fired," it did a lot for his image and made him a cultural icon, actually. And from there, Zucker actually gave so much oxygen to Donald Trump's rallies in his time on CNN. Now, CNN was extremely critical of Donald Trump, but there's no such thing as bad press. They were obsessed with Donald Trump, quite frankly. They gave so much attention to his rallies. They would barely cover. I remember Bush Jeb Bush complaining, why is CNN just focused on this one person? Because the thing with Zucker, what he was able to do, even for CNN, he really boosted their ratings. He had a really good 9-year run. Zucker is like the king of infotainment. He does not believe in anchors sitting there like stuffed shirts. He thinks your program should be both informative and entertaining. So he saw that in Donald Trump and really put a spotlight on Donald Trump. Yes, CNN was very critical, but that also worked in Trump's favor. It worked in CNN's favor. Everybody was happy. So this, for me, is just a really sad way to end that run. But because he is a master at what he does, I don't think he's really going to be crying in his coffee right now. I'm sure he'll land on his feet elsewhere. But the whole point of this is just transparency. That was the downfall of Chris Cuomo, and that is what has caused the downfall of Jeff Zucker. It's not in that corporate culture to have these, skeletons in the closet.
Well, I mean, we took this subject earlier on with Michael Wilson, and I had raised a question. Is this really about morality? Is it about conscience? Was it pushed, or Zucker just decided to jump? And I asked those questions deliberately because, in a sense, this will look like a Chris Cuomo's revenge, because it was his lawyers and he himself that brought up this issue of a morality clause and how it was unfair to turn him adrift when he was accused of inappropriate relationship. It's like when you go to court and charges are preferred against you, and then you say, "Oh, how about this other person who is worse than I am?" I'm sure if you look at CNN, there will still be persons there, with inappropriate relationships, as you may call it, who are still surviving there. So the question is, who invokes that clause? Who takes that decision? More so as in this particular case, the relationship between Jeff Zucker and Gollust, the vice president and chief marketing officer of the company, is very well known. It led to the divorce, on both sides. For the two of them. So it's not as if it's one secret that have been kept somewhere and so secret. And the other question to raise is, okay, the CNN president says he's resigning because he did not disclose it. He probably wants to avoid controversy. But the woman is saying she's going nowhere and she's staying there. So if it's about contractual, clauses, then who is going to invoke that clause against the woman? Because if that is the issue, then you could say Allison Gollust is as guilty as, the CNN president, Zucker. Okay? So it raises a number of questions. But the CNN president has a choice to make in the matter. What if he had decided, like, his partner with whom he had a consensual relationship, as he calls it, what if he had decided to stay back? Now, as for Donald Trump, well, what do you expect him to say? He says viewership has gone down. He characterizes CNN in a very uncomplimentary manner. But I don't think we should worry too much about Mr. Trump's, intervention in this matter.
Absolutely. I mean, I love the fact that you pointed out the fact that Allison Gollust is still within the organization. I mean, with Andrew Cuomo, he was groping people, but this was a consensual relationship. So I wonder what, the Me Too movement, Time's Up movement, how they're going to respond to this. Because usually when the case is if it was reversed, whereas she's getting out and he's staying in, I promise the conversation will be very, very different. But let's talk about Ahmed Audi, the Commandant General of the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps, NsCDC. He has ordered the reinstatement of officers attached to Shina Pella, a member of the House of Representatives. Now, the withdrawal of the NsCDC personnel came hours after the lawmakers sponsored a bill seeking to scrap the agency. But in a statement that was issued on Wednesday night by Odumosho Olushola, the spokesperson for the agency, the NsCDC CG said that the letter from the Oyo commandant was sent without clearance, adding that the officer who ordered the withdrawal acted out of line. Now, it is important to note that Sir Shina Pella basically was saying that the NsCDC, what they do is fine, but allocating funds to the NsCDC and various other security operatives, he believes is counterproductive. The police can do what they do. So the question is this some type of power play? Like, how dare you even bring this up in the House. I will show you who's boss. I mean, this is probably why he asks that they be scrapped.
Yes, it does seem a bit spiteful, doesn't it? I mean, you can't convincingly divorce the two. This attempt to have them scrapped and then that reaction on their part. And yes, I think that argument to scrap that body, I see the logic in it because, you know, there have been police clashes. There was one recently which was so embarrassing when the police turned up to an illegal refinery in Port Harcourt, which is such a hot button issue right now. And they were being resisted by NsCDC officials, which was a terrible look optics-wise. So there's an argument for that. But I think the bigger issue is restructuring, fully restructuring Nigeria and a state police. That for me is the more relevant issue here because, okay, we scrap these bodies and then they're now absorbed into the Nigerian police force, which is a federal institution. The point is that we all need to devolve that police force and we need state police. For me, that's the only conversation to be had right now and the constitutional amendment to secure that. That's it.
Okay, there's been this old argument about big government and the bloated bureaucracy in Nigeria and the need to avoid duplication and to streamline government agencies. So that's the whole argument about the Onosanye report and all of that. With regard to security agencies, before now, you will recall that there were persons who were pushing that the EFCC, the Economic Financial Crimes Commission, and the ICPC, the Independent Corrupt Practices Commission, should be merged. But at some point, that was dropped. Before now also, there have been this argument that the civil defense is a duplication of the Nigerian police. And hence, you always have that tension between civil defense and the police. So if the lawmaker is bringing up that argument, coming from that perspective, then of course he would simply be reinventing an old conversation that has been ongoing. The civil defense itself has been there since 1967, when it was a Lagos Civil Defense Committee. During the Civil War, it was to protect properties and persons. And then it's gone through transformations until 2003, when the Obasanjo government, through Act 2 of 2003, decided to turn it into a formal security outfit. And then that original act was amended in 2007, Act 6 of 2007. And what is their job? Their job is to protect persons and properties in accordance, in collaboration with the police. But they have a core function to protect public buildings, to protect public assets, to prevent or protect pipelines from vandalism. And I think that that's why they're still there. And it was on the basis of that that they were later given the powers to bear arms. Originally, the civil defense did not bear arms. So in that wise, I think that they serve a purpose. And I probably may not support that they be scrapped. So why is Shina Pella saying that they should be scrapped? And I don't know which one comes first, as you have posted. Is he asking that they should be scrapped because civil defense staff attached to him to protect him and his property, whatever, were withdrawn? According to the spokesperson of civil defense, those persons were withdrawn to go on a security assignment. So they attach civil defense officials to some persons. There's something called VIP protection, right? Now, if there is another assignment, they can be withdrawn. So which one comes first? Is Shina Pella reacting because of that, or his own proposal predates that particular action? The third indication in that regard is that now we are told that the civil defense has now issued a statement saying, oh, those civil defense officials attached to him should be returned to him. So if that happens, is he going to withdraw the bill? So the big issue that we see here is that whatever comes first, whether Shina Pella's vituperation or honest proposal or civil defense withdrawing the people attached to it, nobody should make law in Nigeria or propose lawmaking processes to serve personal interests. This is a major issue, one of the major issues raised about Nigeria in Lee Kuan Yew, in his book From the Third World to the First, about how, I don't want to mention names, I don't want to embarrass any family, about how a certain minister of finance, once upon a time in this country, push legislation through parliament so that his factory can benefit and make profit. So the National Assembly should should take a critical look at this. People should not propose laws for personal interest. Every proposal should be in the common good. And while Shinopela has every right to make a proposal, the members of the National Assembly should look at it with a fine-tooth comb and be reasonable in considering his proposals.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm sure if he's putting that bill out there, he's certain that he's not going to have the officers around him anymore either. But let's take a story that I think it's something we all need to begin to understand better. Cerebral palsy. Now, it is a group of disorders that affect a person's ability to move and maintain balance and posture. Now, in Africa, in Nigeria, in our culture, a lot of people look at it as a curse or a punishment to anyone who has to raise a child dealing with it. I mean, the stigma for cerebral palsy and people dealing with it, they have all sorts of harsh nicknames for them that I will not glorify. It has now created a harsh environment where jobs, education, certain basic necessities are difficult to access for people dealing with it, as we saw in the case of Adebolu Adejobi. Now, he is, regardless of the challenges, changing that narrative. He is telling his story on how he emerged as the overall best WAEC student, and his story is one of inspiration to many. Let's take a look at that.
A teacher told me to take transfer due to relocation of houses. I took transfer to Ajaikada, Memorial Senior Grammar School, Baiga. The school was an only boys' school, so I was like a stranger to everybody because I do not know anybody in the school. I decided that, okay, since I'm here now, I want to be in science class because that's the class that can profit me. And me making a vow to my grandmother to study in the medical field. So I told the principal, but they all turned me down, saying I can't stay in science class because I do not have coordination. As time goes on, they took me to Modukwa School where the counselors advised me that they should just test me just for a term. I got into Ajaikada during the 9th week, just 3 weeks to the exam. And I got the exam with 96 students in the class. I came out one of the top 10 students of that school. And decided that, okay, since I could come on at that position, that they should try me for the entire term and see how it goes. And with that, I finished my school. And just one particular day, my school told me that WAEC is in the corner.
Oh, bless him. I'm so inspired. I thought you were going to say something catchy, but your intro was so beautifully done, catchy, so inspiring. Adebolu, such a brilliant mind.
You.
But what you said really broke my heart, that people call people names for having cerebral palsy. Thankfully, I've never heard any such thing. But I have to say that it's not anybody's fault.
Oh my God, Tundun, they do.
The causes of cerebral palsy could be perinatal oxygen deprivation, like when the baby is being born, they're somehow asphyxiated. It could be prematurity. It could be genetic. It's really not their fault. That's ridiculous. And this is the issue with stigmatizing disability. Any one of us could become disabled at any moment. This sort of ableist society that we live in that does not countenance the fact that any accident could happen, ill health, anything could literally happen. So I really think that this is one of the, for me, important parts of the legacy of President Muhammadu Buhari, because he's the one who finally signed into law our National Disability Act. The full name is Discrimination Against Disabled Persons Act in Nigeria. After 18 years, President Buhari finally signed that act into law. We now have that National Commission for Disabilities. But, you know, it's one thing to sign a law, pass a law, it's another to enforce it. This young man, this Adebolu, faced so much discrimination before he could actually emerge and before he was given the chance to show his talent, to show his intellect. And I just want to know what's going to happen now. There was a case in Ghana of a young man who was sent on scholarship by the Ghanaian government because he performed phenomenally well in his WAEC exams. He's now in Brunel University in the UK. I really hope the Nigerian government takes this up because it's so important to show disabled people are stigmatized constantly. They have to deal with all kinds of abuse. They have to deal with unemployment because even to get a place in a classroom, like what Adebolu has just said, was difficult, was a challenge. So I really hope that the federal government, state government, everybody, and thank you, Kachi, for highlighting this story, jumps on this story and really uses it to teach, to educate, to sensitize people about the rights of your fellow human being. Even if they look different from you, they act different from you, they are as human as you, and they deserve every single right that you enjoy, every single right that you demand for yourself should be extended to others.
Okay, I think this is a story of hope. It's a subtle reminder that there is ability in disability. And that, look, when persons have certain conditions, whether it's cerebral palsy or any other type of condition, it doesn't mean that hope is lost with regard to them. And I always tell parents who have autistic children, autism is another very common thing in Nigeria, you know, that many autistic persons, you discover that they have a special talent. It is for you to give them the opportunity to flower, to put that talent to use. One of the biggest composers in history, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Mozart was autistic, but he produced some of the best, organ music compositions, ever produced in history. And it is on the basis of that that groups working in the area of disabilities have always argued for the empowerment of special education schools. Nigeria has special education schools for appropriate law. And yes, it is true that in 2021, June 2021, President Muhammadu Buhari signed that Discrimination Against Persons, Disabled Persons with Disabilities Prohibition Act. And in August, he set up a council. That body has a council. But unfortunately, that commission, the commission that came out of that process, the National Disabilities Commission, has not been properly funded. We have even had cases of fraud coming out of that commission. And persons with disabilities in Nigeria, on more than 3 occasions since that law was passed, have had to go to the National Assembly, to picket the National Assembly and protest that, look, the discrimination, the marginalization against them continues. And so it's not enough to do the law, to set up the council. It's more important to give effect to it. Another thing highlighted by this story is this discrimination against persons with disabilities. And yet, it was this Adebolu Adejobi person who performed better out of a class of 96 and went on to excel in the West African Examination Council, final exam. So this must be a lesson also, to various schools and institutions that discriminate against persons who fall into this category. And I think that the people at the Modupe Cole School, need to be commended for giving him the opportunity. And I hope that other stakeholders in Nigeria, having identified this talented person, will support both him and his parents and other parents who may have children who are also challenged in one way or the other. We learn the lesson that, look, there is hope, there is ability in disability. It's just for you to have an open mind and discover it. And I hope many of our NGOs working in this area will use this example to further enlighten the public.
Thank you for that point about Mozart, because, Beethoven, Ludwig van Beethoven, was profoundly deaf when he composed the 9th Symphony. He never heard it. So it's amazing. You can't just discard people because of a disability.
Yes, Mozart's own problem was that he was autistic. He was childlike. But anytime he sat in front of the organ, he produced great work. Okay, thank you very much, Kachi. We'll leave it here and see you again tomorrow morning. Thank you very much indeed.